Peoples, just checking in with the peoples, man. I am making this video in response. I won't even say in response. I just want to expound on a few different things in response to watching the Infominds interview with Kevmac, Timbo, the big bro Killer Kev, the bro Mel Cross, in which during that particular Infominds video, the bro Mel Cross had a lot of strong things to say, man. That brother's real sharp. I respect the bro. Bro's official. You know, he made some valid points. But I just wanted to expound on a few things. Like, I keep hearing a lot of individuals discuss New York City Bloods and the creation of it. Now, was I on Rikers Island in 1993? No, I was not. I might have been like 12, 11 or something like that, you know? So I was definitely not there. So I'm not pretending that I know exactly what was on the mind of OG Mac, because I never met the brother. I've met some of the other big brothers that was involved and that was around him, you know? I'm personally affiliated with Iz. I know the brother Shaquell and a few other brothers that was amongst that top tier of individuals. And I've gotten all kind of stories from individuals in relation to that. So what I have done is I've compounded all those stories, put them together, and took what makes the most sense. You know, the brother Kevmac, he makes a lot of videos. I think sometimes he takes offense to the New York blood situation because he has his own particular theory, and a lot of the brothers from New York don't necessarily agree with his Monster Cody book theory that OG Mac drew his blood knowledge from, which is understandable. I understand where some of the brothers are coming from. And I've read that book about 3-4 times, you know, and in that book, it's no way, I wouldn't even say no way, it's really not a favorable look. It's really not a favorable look when it comes to that, the portrayal of the Bloods in that book is not favorable because, again, that book is primarily about Crips. And when something is primarily about Crips, he couldn't have drawn much blood reference from it besides just the mere mention of the UBN, which it was just a, you know, like a minimum reference. It wasn't an extensive reference about the UBN. What's not being discussed and mentioned in these interviews is that New York lingo is Trey. We talk like Trey and nickel bags and dime bags, and you know, that's how we are. So when he made non-Trey, that's how we talk. Like, you know, we talk that way in the 90s. Trey bags, the non-Trey. A lot of rappers made reference to that. You know, the non-nickel or the non-square, like this, because we had a lot of righteous engagement, so we would use certain terms. But Trey, that's like a New York term as well. So the way they use it is different than the way we use it. So being that that's the year he started the Bloods and he named his gang Non-Trey Gangsters, it would make a lot of sense that he just made it because that's just his lingo from New York, and that it didn't have anything in particular to do with, you know, 8 Trey Gangsters. You know, although he might have liked the name because we use Trey as well, so he used that name. And he might have read that particular part of the book. But for the most part, New York used the word Trey in a different way as well. So it could have been that. The thing is, nobody that was around him really has the knowledge base as to what really was on his mind during this time. So because of that, it's very difficult for us to really make any assumptions as to where he got his knowledge base from, The only person that would be able to tell you that is him, and unfortunately, he's an unfavorable person because of some of the acts that he's done. So therefore, like, having a discussion with him makes no sense. Because taking his word at this time it's not going to be looked upon favorably. But and the second conversation I want to have is related to just New York City Bloods in general. Like, we have such a structure that it differs from LA because they don't have a leadership structure the way we set it up. So it's always going to look different. It's always going to sound different because their neighborhoods are set up different. We're used to having an individual, a big homie from our neighborhood, even if he's not gang related, he's neutral, he's whatever. We're always used to having a big homie somehow, some way assisting us within our structures, our crews, our blocks. There's always somebody that's very reputable on that block that is more, controlling than the other. That's just how we used to doing things. That's just really what we do. So when we have those type of discussions about paperwork and the way we structure our UBN, it's just really the way we structure our blocks and our previous gangs that we had prior. That's really what we had prior, and that's really how we structured it prior. And what's failed to mention is what's failed to be understood is a lot of these individuals that have been doing, a lot of the older individuals, the OG Killer Kevs, which is one of the reputables from Brownsville, Fisher brother, not taking away anything from him. And you got the Mel Cross, and you got the Corey Kings. A lot of these brothers were not home during the 90s. A lot of them weren't home during the 2000s. And if they were, they weren't active on like MySpace and the things that were out at the time, where a lot of these New York Bloods were getting their information from when they started really finding ways to connect to West Coast counterparts. And the biggest West Coast counterparts that they were connecting to at the time was the T. Rogers kid and the Mac Drama guy and the Brazy K guy who was doing the bounty hunter thing. He brought some stuff out here, but for the most part, these are who New York people was really mentioning every day. T. Rogers. His name kept coming up every single time a conversation came about. A lot of New York City information in the 2000s was based on the BSV jungle situation, and that's why they started to validate the 5-point star, and that's why that's where the information came from that Bloods don't do the 5-point star, through him. He started explaining it to us that only those individuals in the jungles go by that because of their Chicago roots. And he also made it seem like he was the creator of Blood, and he started Blood, and it was this big meeting with the Bloods on the block, and they all decided to become Blood one day, and every Blood was Crip at a time. And he had a lot of information, man. He had a lot of information that was not correct. And I got all my direct information from Kevmac. His videos gave me a lot of real information, listening to AC Moses, to Giacomo. A lot of these brothers, these Paru brothers, gave a real story, a real account of to really how, and even though their accounts was a little skewed as well, but their accounts was the most, especially AC Moses, his account was the most, notable in the sense, and it was the most credible. It's, there was really not much dispute in that. All his disputes come from all that whole Crip thing when he was Crip prior, and he was the only one Crip. It wasn't like a whole, like all Bloods was Crip at one time, is what we thought. And this is what I was trying to, I inbox Kevmac, he responds sometimes. I know he'd be busy. Me and him have an open dialogue at times. This is what I was telling him, that we got a lot of our education and our information from T. Rogers, and he's not mentioned in any of the Bloods interviews. I don't hear anything related to his name. Once or twice I hear a little bit about him, but I don't hear much about him like he made it seem during the 2000s, that he was largely responsible for the Bloods. Maybe I'm only listening to AC Moses from the Paru aspect, but Kevmac had a lot of other bloods up there. He had to Skip Townsend. He got his own thing, and I don't hear him overly mentioning T. Rogers as any full-fledged founder of the Bloods. And I'm not knocking T. Rogers, but I know for a fact specifically, because I've had interactions and conversations with this brother, where a lot of the Bloods in New York City got their information from. If you ask a lot of 2000 Bloods and mid-2000s about T. Rogers and some of the stories that they heard, this is what you would hear. You would hear that, we all thought he was the creator of Blood, that he started it, he was the founder. He was the biggest homie on the West. That's what you would have heard. That's, when you looked at the Feds magazine and you looked that way, and what he said in that, and the portrayal he had in that. So this is where we got our information from. I don't know where Mac got his information from, where he drew from. He might have had a reference or two to the Monster Code book, but I don't even think the Monster Code book was even in full rotation in 1993 in New York City. I can't even tell you that. Because a lot of those type of books wasn't landing on the island. A lot of brothers in New York wasn't reading that type of stuff. Where he read it, I don't know. When that book came out, I don't know. But in 1993, when they started that, I don't know if that Monster Cody book was even really out or in rotation in New York City like that. So I can't tell you. I have to research that and get back to you on another video. So I just really want to discuss that. Make mention of that. Just to let the people know and start, bringing that to light on where the New York City Bloods got their identity from later on. I'm not talking about the early on identity, but when they started to, separate from Mac and the individuals that were in the community, they started reaching out to different individuals from the West Coast. A lot of Paru guys, a lot of guys was coming over here, giving the New York City Bloods mixed information that wasn't accurate. And none of it I heard thus far correlates with AC Moses and the Bloods that's on Kevmac videos. None of it. No big blood meeting in the middle of the street. None of that shit. None of that all Bloods was once Crips. None of that correlates. And the biggest misconception that is out there is that, Bloods in general and gangs in general directly descended from the Black Panther Party. There's a lot of misconceptions in relation to that. And when I'm hearing all these older 60-year-old men on Kevmac, that's where I get my, most of my information from primarily. A lot of them discuss the Black Panther Party. A lot of them even know, Bunchy Carter, his brother. A lot of them know that, but none of them admit to it initially being a political-based organization. They all cite that they all started as neighborhood individuals, dealing in just, minimal gangbanging. There wasn't the most extreme of violence in the beginning, but there was definitely not a large political base. And most of the descendants did not have that political mindset because they were kids. Raymond was a kid. Tookie was a kid. I definitely don't hear anything related to anything political with Tookie or Raymond. So this is the concept that we got in New York City. This is the concept that we have. This is a lot of people are failing to realize to even mention these things on these interviews because a lot of them are just self-promoting themselves, but they're not understanding how we were misled, period, in general, all over the world. That, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that all Bloods and Crips came from the Black Panther Party. That's how it descended. Now, was it a direct result of the decline of the Black Panther Party, where there wasn't any leadership once the Bloods and Crips did grow to even offset the violence that grew and the large number of interest of getting into gangs? That's could be true. That could be Very well true. But it did not grow directly from that like we thought. If you start hearing people, especially in New York, say where Bloods and Crips came from, we was original Black Panthers. They were not. And I got all my solid information, and I'm keep plugging Kevmac because I watch his videos on my drive home, and that's why I decided to make me another video and just discuss it, man, and just hear that. But at this particular time, at this particular junction, I am going to end this video. I am going to just say, all you brothers that's tuned in to Kevmac for some follow-up history, you should do that. Because he has the outlet for it. Skip Townsend, good brother too. He got some information. Shout out all the big homies from New York City that's been on these platforms doing their thing. So a lot of those brothers was just not home because they did a lot of time. They was getting busy, so they was doing a lot of time in the 90s and the 2000s. A lot of them brothers just landed back to the community. So a lot of them was really detached from the internet era, in the beginning of the internet era, the MySpace and all of that type of shit that was going on around that particular time. So a lot of them don't really know the misconceptions that was going on, in the communities in relation to that. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of light because, I was out here for that. I was around. And then, I bear witness to a lot of stuff that was going on, and I was introduced to the T. Rogers guy from one of my little bros. He was heavily into that whole, MySpace thing, and he had me on the phone with this brother, and this particular brother had his particular concept, and that's just what it was. I just never really jumped into it because I'm from New York City, so I didn't really want to get too deep into the West Coast, politics and the business of it. But I do understand where some of you brothers get a little offended when things are not done right, because like Mel Cross said, man, we got our own sets that are homegrown, and we got the East, I got the West, so we really got the East. This is ours. So some of our sets are traveling to different places and getting misrepresented, and they're following the East Coast structure of blood, and it's not, the principles are not upheld. So we understand all that. We respect that, and we doing this, and the brothers here sometimes do the same thing to people in the South and other states that's close to us as you guys might be doing to them, or in some opinion that you guys might want to do to us. Y'all might want to put us under the wing and make us follow your structure. But the thing is, a lot of West Coast brothers, you guys don't have any structure because you guys deal with your neighborhoods in a manner that only is specific to LA. So we're unable to follow that structure the way I deal with it. Because y'all don't have the same particular structure that we have over here. We have a whole different set of standards, rules, and our neighborhoods are structured differently, and it's not technically ingrained the same way as is ingrained in you guys, because y'all have a longer, deeper history, roots with y'all sets and y'all communities, because y'all sets are more so y'all communities. Y'all sets are y'all communities. Our sets are spread out everywhere, and it's not necessarily attached to communities. So it's hard for us to follow those particular structures that y'all got in your neighborhoods. But it's all love and respect. You know what I mean? Respect to the West. Definitely shout out to my guys from the East, the Mozzies, in particular. Shout out to the guys. You be good. Peace. Signing out.